over 80% of M&A transactions in Brazil are conducted by local buyers. A foreign investment in Brazil has a very significant advantage over local buyers.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I am your host, Nick Olsen. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Today's guest is Leonardo Toscano, Managing Director of Excelia, a leading M&A advisory firm based in Brazil. Leo brings deep on-the-ground expertise in the Brazilian middle market with a strong track record advising both domestic and international clients. He has extensive experience navigating cross-border transactions, helping foreign buyers enter Brazil, and supporting Brazilian companies expanding globally. With a front row seat to shifting economic conditions and investor sentiment, Leo offers a unique perspective on where opportunities and risk exist today. We're going to dive into all things M&A in the Brazilian market and what opportunities are available for cross-border deals with Leo and his team. Leo, welcome to the show. Really glad you could join me here today.
Thank you very much, Nick, for having me. It's a real honor to be part of your channel. Your podcast is a real success in M&A matters. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And you're only going to elevate that with the amazing guest that you are.
Thank you.
But I want to start out, you and your firm joined Cornerstone International Alliance this year, beginning of the year. And we were just talking offline, but just tell us a little bit about your experience thus far as being part of Cornerstone.
Well, we've been looking for be part of a M&A association, international association, for quite some time. And we evaluate some of the associations. Cornerstone was a real match for us because we are specialized in middle markets. And besides that, by servicing Brazilian companies and preparing them for a M&A transaction, mostly on sell-side advisory, we are, as you mentioned, specialized in cross-border transactions. In our view and in our experience, cross-border transactions offer a very good opportunity for sellers to end up with a very satisfactory result in the transaction. And on the side of the buyers, the opportunities in Brazil are huge because of exchange rates, tax incentives, and they can access the huge Brazilian markets by acquiring a local company. So Cornerstone gave us this perspective. We are talking about being part of Cornerstone with business partners, financial institutions, and we just tell that we are international right now. So it was very positive in terms of opening doors for us to reinforce our experience and reach outside of Brazil in looking for potential buyers for the target companies in Brazil. It's been very positive for us so far.
What you were at our 2026 in-person conference, which was the first opportunity for you and Rafael and who's a part of your team to meet some of the other Cornerstone International Alliance members in person. What was your thoughts and experience like getting together in person?
Well, it was a surprise for us because we Brazilians are very warm and friendly. We were hosted wonderfully by you guys. The impression was that we were part of Cornerstone for much more time than a newcomer. So it was very positive. We got to know different people from around the world. The connection was almost immediate. After that, we arranged a bunch of meetings with them to explore in more detail the opportunities in Brazil and presenting not only the country, but some of our mandates. We have about 24 mandates right now in terms of M&A opportunities for buyers. We have naturally, we are representing sell side most of the cases, and Brazil is too cheap right now, as I mentioned before. Brazil is cheap. Companies, but there's a huge market. Is 230 million people in Brazil, buying products, service. The Brazilian consumer markets is growing a lot. For example, healthcare and real estate, energy. So we had the chance to present and acquired. We received a wonderful attention, quality time for the members of Cornerstone. So the atmosphere is very friendly, but at the same time, it is productive. As our time is the only thing that we have actually is our asset. So we were very, very positively received and hosted by you guys. Thank you very much for having.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to have a little bit of fun and be productive at the same time. I know we were able to do both when we were together in Arizona. So I appreciate that insight. So we want to dive into, you mentioned a little bit about the Brazilian market, the M&A market in Brazil. How has that changed from today compared to a couple of years ago? How have things evolved or changed in the last couple of years for M&A in Brazil?
Well, these days, I would say starting last year, we've seen a very strong M&A market. The volume of transactions has increased a lot. For example, in 2025, we had 35% more money involved in M&A transaction than the year before. Of course, United States is the main source of investments in Brazil. In the first quarter of 2026, we had a record foreign investment in Brazil. But today, what we see different is that transactions are involving strategic buyers more than financial investors. For example, the private equity managers. So global companies or companies trying to establish a regional reach, including Brazil, are looking for opportunities in our country. So this brings some new aspects as well. For example, they're much more disciplined. They're demanding in terms of compliance, in terms of due diligence. And this is exactly what Excelia practices. We're not a simple broker of companies. Our mission is a very simple one, is create value. We don't believe that M&A transaction creates value for itself. The value is created because the company has a positive agenda, a strategic agenda. M&A transaction needs to be conducted with discipline and compliance. What creates value is to demonstrate the agenda of the company and promote to the investor eyes the perspectives of the future in the company. Not only the company itself, the market position, the brand, the equipment, the plant, the base of clients, but the synergies and advantage that a specific buyer can establish by going through a transaction. So this represented an opportunity for Excelia's methodology. We are very occupied and invest a lot of money in establishing a methodology that thinks with the mind of the investor. We anticipate things. So we're not only prepare teasers or info memos and spread out to target investors. We work with the company for some time before presenting to the market. So this is increasing our portfolio of opportunities, and we actually communicate the advantage of Excelia being part of the Cornerstone Alliance, because right now we are I say that we gained superpowers with Cornerstone.
I love it.
Because not only we reach the target investor by doing some research, but we have somebody in the last mile to the contact, if possible, depending on the location of the investor. So this is happening. Brazil is becoming a target destination, preferred destination for global companies. In other words, a company that wants to explore the global market needs to be in Brazil. They're obliged to look at Brazil, the opportunities and the questions that Brazil has in terms of political interest rates and tax regulations, so on and so forth. But where there's risk, Nick, as you know a lot, there's opportunity together. So Brazil presents a wonderful opportunities for investors from abroad.
What are hot industries right now in Brazil as far as businesses go? What are you seeing a lot of? Where are you seeing a lot of traction on investors looking at Brazil for certain industries? Anything you're seeing in particular?
Yeah. Well, besides technology, which is always a very active market sector, in Brazil, we have three sectors that are under consolidation. First of all is healthcare, hospitals, clinics. For example, we have three clients in eye clinics. We have over 13,000 eye clinics in Brazil. They're very fragmented, owned by doctors. They created these clinics, small hospitals, and the market is now under consolidation. We had last week one of the largest companies in the world in these sectors. They acquired a consolidation vehicle in Brazil for $400 million. And we were amazed. This company is a Chinese company called Ayer Eye. They have 1,200 hospitals in the world, including hundreds of
Wow.
hospitals in the United States. They specialize in eye surgeries, right? So they are only one of four consolidators in this market in Brazil.
Mm.
So this is very, very heated market. Besides healthcare in general, hospitals and medical devices and specialized service like the one I mentioned, we have education. In Brazil, private education is, first of all, education is an obligation of the state. The Brazilian government is obliged by constitution to provide education. Of course, the government is not able to provide quality education for everybody, and the government authorized private companies to explore the businesses by concession. I guess it's just like in other countries. I don't know about the United States, but in Brazil, this helped to create over 4,000 in Brazil. One of them we helped to establish by preparing the business plan. The startup business plan is called Maple Bear School. They have over 400 schools right now. We started this as a business plan consultancy service about 10 years ago. It is just the Canadian specialized education system. That's why they're called Maple Bear. And they occupy the market space by providing bilingual education. So there's a huge market. It's over $20 billion a year in terms of tuition. And we have over 10 companies consolidating this market, acquiring private schools in Brazil. Three from Europe, they're acquiring these schools in Brazil and making it grow with new operational units. And the third market is agribusiness. This is very strong in Brazil. Now, Brazil is a huge agribusiness sector. in terms of animal protein, like beef and chicken, so on and so forth, and grains. Besides the business that is conducted in the fields, like the plantation, so on, so forth, we have the ecosystem around this primary business. We have service, we have equipment, we have supplements, and we we saw like 200 companies acquired by private equity funds in the last 10 years. So this is a very, very strong market in terms of M&A transactions, not only in number of transactions, but in volume. And although Brazil, the foreign investments are not entitled to acquire land in Brazil. I don't know if you know about this. This is forbidden, but they can acquire businesses linked to the agriculture business. So is one of the three sectors that are very active in Brazil right now. And those three sectors represent almost 50% of our mandates right now.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. What about just from a cross-border perspective, how much of your deals, you mentioned a couple of hot industries, how many of your deals are Brazilian seller to Brazilian buyer, and what does the Brazilian seller to, international buyers look like? What does that ecosystem look like right now?
Well, I would say that over 80% of M&A transactions in Brazil are conducted by local buyers, which is a real opportunity because a foreign investment in Brazil has very significant advantage over local buyers. First of all, the cost of capital outside of Brazil, especially in the North Hemisphere, is incredibly low. Strong companies or companies with good credit worthiness can borrow money to acquire business outside of their home country with very low interest rate and extended terms. Not only that, but Brazil has tax incentives for investors from abroad. For example, if you establish a vehicle of investment in Brazil and bring foreign capital to the country, you would never pay income tax over the profits on a transaction. This is especially attractive for private equity managers. They don't pay income tax over the valuation of the companies once they sell. They don't pay anything to Brazilian authorities. If the manager established in a tax haven origin, this can represent a very good advantage. And the exchange rate, Brazil is cheap right now. The exchange rate, real is not valued over strong currencies like dollar or euro. And besides that, Nick, talking about the opportunities for international investments, Brazilian companies are highly leveraged right now. Our basic interest rate is 15% a year compared to 4% inflation. So we have the highest real interest rate in the world right now. This makes companies very complicated with managing their capital structure. They're leveraged. Basically, the operational cash flow that they generate is going straight to the service of debt, So they are open for suboptimal transactions, M&A transactions, because of a very particular situation in Brazil. Middle market in Brazil is family-owned companies, almost 100%. And creditors in Brazil demand collateral from the family net worth, land, guarantees, so on and so forth. So family-owned companies in Brazil are open for transactions, or they're looking for transactions to save their net worth because it's already connected to the company debt. So that's why we're showing to international investors transactions that are very attractive in terms of all these advantages and the opportunity to establish a very fast presence in Brazil with companies with good, I would say, good principles, good assets, and a market position, brand. Of course, you have to go through all the complexities of conducting a transaction with Brazil. You know, I would say that a cross-border transaction is always complex. It's different from buying a company in other states of the United States. So it's complex, but the opportunities are huge. We're showing the investors the IRR of transactions are over 20% that we demonstrate to them what the return that they would have in the investments in Brazilian companies. Sorry.
I was going to say, what are some of the complexities that you see in just doing cross-border transactions?
We have a understanding about Brazilian tax regime is a real challenge. We have 46 states. Every state has its own tax regulation. So depending on the location of a company, and especially if the target company is present in more than one state, so the complexity is real challenge. Nevertheless, Brazil is changed the tax regime through a constitutional reform approved 2 years ago. We are under the transition period. We're going to have a tax system just like United States. VAT is the base of everything. So it's value-added tax. So this is going to become easier to understand in about 2 or 3 years. So we're in the transition. Another complexity is labor. Our labor regulations are not only complex, but employees in Brazil, they have a bunch of benefits, not exactly linked to performance. So they have a right of receiving 13 salary and participation of profits by law, and this turns the transaction more costly, I would say. But most of all is the difficulties in understanding the decision maker has to go through the understanding of the local regulations and the way of doing business. This is our role. We help the companies to understand and prepare the target companies, Brazilian target companies. As we say, we always try to prepare a client of Excelia to become a natural subsidiary of an international company with processes and systems, of course, leadership that are prepared to be part of an international platform.
What are some of the, one last question for you, Leo. This has been great. You get a lot of great insights into it. And I know if our listeners want to learn more, we can connect them with you. But just looking ahead to the future, what are the biggest opportunities you feel like are in the Brazilian market, whether it's new funding sources, innovative structures, or cross-border partnerships? And what should advisors be doing now to get ready for that and to really put the Brazilian market, at the forefront when they're looking at opportunities for their sellers or their buyers?
Right. Well, Nick, I would say that one opportunity in terms of format of transaction Mezzanine transactions are much more easier to perform, to develop. So you start as a private credit or private debt structure, and then you decide if you're going to transform this in equity, depending on the proceeds, the outcome of the transaction. This is a real opportunity because of high interest rate in Brazil. I mentioned that the basic interest rate is 15%, but companies in Brazil, they don't get money for less than 20% a year. So it's huge. So if it's an international company developed a source of funds with debt outside of Brazil in their home country, they can transfer this to Brazil with all the tax advantages and do some arbitrage with the interest rate. You don't need to conduct a complex M&A transaction. Just start with a private debt using, for example, a fund structure. The final investment the investors don't need to appear in total. And so this is a real opportunity because, as I said, companies in Brazil are too leveraged. Over 60% of companies are in Brazil, in terms of, according to statistics, have over 2.5 times debt over EBITDA in Brazil. So is really pushy, is a real challenge. This is one opportunity. And another opportunity is to look for Brazil as a destination to get into the Latin America or a broader market. Brazil is over 40% of Latin America in terms of population, GDP, and Brazil has a large population for itself. The local market is huge, but we have good source of metals, raw material. Labor is not expensive in Brazil, although there's complexities to be understood, but labor is not expensive as in the North Hemisphere, in Europe, United States. So getting into Brazil, establish a production or service platform is almost ready for like 12 other countries to service. So M&A transaction is like accelerating the expansion strategy. Brazil has this opportunity to you do one transaction, then we explore other markets, neighbor countries very quickly. So those are the two opportunities that we can see in the near future, receiving more attention in M&A markets.
Great, Leo. Appreciate your insights, and obviously truly an expert in your space, and really glad that you and your team are part of Cornerstone International Alliance. So thank you for joining the show here today. Where can our listeners, if they want to connect with you or learn more about Excelia website, or however, how can they find you guys?
Yeah, our website is, the name of the company is www.excelia, excelia.com.br, Excelia. And of course, in LinkedIn, we are very active in LinkedIn. Our profile is open for contacts, and we would be glad to get in touch with international parties to help them to do business in Brazil. It's going to be a real pleasure.
Awesome. Amazing. Leo, again, thank you for joining. That's all we have for this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast. Make sure to share this episode with anybody who you think might benefit from our conversation. Anybody who you think might be a good investor in the Brazilian market. Make sure to share this conversation and connect with Leo. And we're really excited to have such a great firm in the Brazilian market as part of our group. We have another one that's a great firm as well, who focuses on technology. And so really a great presence for our international alliance in Brazil, and two great expert firms. So thank you, Leo, again. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to stay notified whenever a new episode airs. Until next time, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.